The once mighty Sony A7 III. When this camera was released, the rest of the camera sphere shook with awe, and we were all absolutely waylaid by how amazing it was to have a full-frame mirrorless camera that shot 4K internal with no crop. Now, since those lofty days of yesteryear, like 2 years ago, there have been some serious contenders to the crown of the top camera released, so that really begs the question, how is the A7 III holding up, and does this still maintain its position of dominance in a shrinking and highly competitive camera marketplace? Let's find out. What's up, everyone? I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. Now, it's no secret that I like / potentially love the Sony camera line. While they do have some issues that I hope are fixed in future releases, you'd be hard-pressed to find a system that has the adaptability, versatility, and the ease of use that Sony brings to the table. I've made several videos talking about the A7 III in the past, and today we're not gonna go super in-depth as I'm gonna try to avoid retreading ground as much as possible. But what I do want to do is, after checking out all of the awesome competition released in 2019, I wanna see, we're going into 2020, is the A7 III still on top? Does this still hold the full frame title, or did something this year knock it off the pedestal? Let's start off by talking about the reason you get a camera in the first place: image quality. And since we're talking about the Sony in image quality, let's switch it out so we can actually see how it works as a talking head / YouTuber-y kind of a camera. On that full frame goodness. So I do want to start with a few key spec highlights if you've never actually heard of the A7 III, which you'd have to have been living under a camera rock for that to happen. The Sony A7 III continues to have a 24 megapixel full frame sensor. It can record at up to 4K 30 frames per second, 8-bit 420 internal, and it can also do a full width of the sensor at 24 frames per second. But for us sane people that use 30 frames per second, we will have to deal with an additional 1.2-ish crop. Slow motion can be done in the camera at 120 frames per second at 1080p, and it continues to have Sony's insane phase detection autofocus system, which, after a few firmware updates, like right now, it has some of the best autofocus you'll find on a camera. But enough of the specs. How does it actually look? Well, you're seeing it right now. I think it looks pretty darn good, or I wouldn't be using it. Sony has gotten a bad reputation for having improper colors and just bad-looking, sterile, gross image quality. I disagree. I think the image quality coming out of their current cameras is some of the best that you are going to find. And that's not to say that other brands look bad, because they don't. I use a wide variety of camera brands. Every company right now has cameras that will give you fantastic results. But back to the A7 III. I think the image quality is fantastic. It's nice and sharp and has dynamic range for days. One of the reasons I purchased this camera was to take my YouTube thumbnails, because you can shoot in almost any light and that raw file can be pushed around to insane levels. Now let's talk about Canon cameras. I do like Canon cameras for video, and I know I'm gonna catch flack for this, but I didn't find the raw files to be as versatile when trying to create eye-catching images for thumbnails. It's a great camera, but you do have to be more precise. On the A7 III, you don't have to be precise, you don't have to be careful. Highlights can be recovered, shadows can be pushed. For somebody that doesn't take many photos, me, I really appreciate the assistance that this camera basically, you don't have to pay attention to photos. You take the photos, you can do whatever you want with them either way. But photos, on to the most important side, video. This sensor is actually a 6K sensor that downsamples to 4K, but what that means for you is you get 6K worth of information squished into a 4K codec, giving you super detailed and crisp footage, better than if it was a 4K sensor just giving you 4K information. It's not all sunshine and rainbows though. Like I mentioned in the specs overview, this is a 100 megabits a second, 8-bit 420 codec. There is no way to increase this, even if you record externally like we're doing right now. So if you do need to grade heavily in post, this might not be a great choice for you. But if you lightly grade, or you don't plan on touching anything as you get everything right in camera, you'll be fine. This does have several picture profiles built into the menus that are quite versatile. I used to primarily shoot video in picture profile 1, but anymore I'm really starting to like the HLG2 profile. In fact, we're currently recording in HLG2. Here's what it looks like raw before, and here's what the processing looks like afterwards, with very few light touches, because HLG2 is designed to be like a capture and then immediately deliver picture profile. Which, if you're scared of color grading, don't worry. I never really touched grading before, and I'm just dabbling a little bit. I'm not doing much than like moving little sliders around. And that's nice because S-Log is kind of rough to work with, in my opinion. I really like Canon C-Log. That's my favorite log profile to work with. Sony S-Log, kind of scary. That might be the most we've ever talked about image quality here before. But image quality is great, right? But audio is just as, if not more important than the technical image quality of a camera. And thankfully, Sony is one of the 2 companies that I really trust to handle internal camera audio. If you use the built-in 3.5mm audio import, you can get a really clean and no distortion audio. But what you've actually been hearing this whole time through this video is Sony has a line of mountable powered XLR options for their mirrorless cameras. We've been recording on the K3M, which is something that I've recently purchased and makes the A7 III, it makes it so much more powerful as a video platform. You can capture 2 powered microphones internal on the camera with this. Now you could go out and buy something like the Zoom H6 and run the line into the camera. I did that for a long time, but then you need batteries to manage, and then you gotta run it into the camera, and you gotta make sure the audio's good. It's just a pain. Here on the A7 III with the K3M, you just plug it in and you're good to go. It's fantastic. This is not a video about the K3M, but I highly recommend it. Video quality is great and all, but if you are an online content creator, especially a solo creator, then you need a camera to be part of the team and run itself as much as possible. And here the Sony does kind of derail a bit, which kind of sucks because it did have fantastic audio and fantastic image quality. Yes, there is no flip screen. Which, I mean, at this point you could take or leave. For some it will be a big deal, for others not so much. It does make creating by yourself so much easier if you can manage the camera settings while you're in front of the camera without needing additional gear. Atomos. It's not Atomos' fault. But the Sony does have a lot of real powerful auto capabilities that will let you have faith that you're going to be properly exposed and in focus while you're talking to the camera if you don't have any way to see what's going on. The autofocus might not be Sony's newest eye-tracking autofocus that they can do in video, but there isn't that much of a difference between that eye autofocus and the face tracking that you're seeing right now. The face autofocus is a reliable system when it comes down to it. However, all autofocus can fail from time to time, but Sony does well enough that I trust it, and I really only trust Sony and Canon for continuous video autofocus. Like I mentioned previously, the dynamic range of the camera is nuts, so leaving it in auto ISO and some kind of priority mode can take your mind off of being terrified that everything is overexposed. You just don't worry about it. Let the camera do the work, because this camera is like its own crew. Another problem though, and thankfully one that's been rectified with Sony's newest cameras, when you plug the A7 III into a monitor and you're not recording to that monitor, you lose face tracking autofocus. It's not a big deal, you can't set the box somewhere and it'll do perfectly fine, but it does kind of suck. And on a rant here for a second, that port that you plug that HDMI cord into, is it a full or even mini? That pause probably isn't a good sign, right? No, it's that crappy micro HDMI. I hate micro HDMI, and honestly, I've considered only using this for stills and never for video, solely because of how useless and easy to break of a port micro HDMI is. Any camera that's aimed for working professionals, or heck, any camera made from here on out, shouldn't have micro HDMI. It's the worst. And also, these port doors on the side sucks. Since we're just, throwing shade at the A7 III, thankfully Sony did fix that in the A7R4. But besides that, physically the camera is also really easy to use, the buttons are all set up intuitively, and it's really easy to operate without too much fiddling. And since a lot of people want to use this as a vlogging camera, let's throw in the standard TED, the Everyday Dad, vlogging test. Okay, and welcome to the vlogging test of the Sony A7 III. Now we had to do this real quick because, as you can see, it's crazy gross outside, and it's been pouring and snowing, and a big storm just moved through to the East Coast today. So I'm very thankful that we were able to get this moment to come out here and actually do the vlogging test, because you say in the video you got to do it, right? So this is on the Tamron 17-28 2.8, and I don't have a tripod, I don't have anything. As you can just see, I'm hand holding the camera. And as a big thing that I'm not sure if we're gonna continue doing or not, we've actually got that K3M that I talked about, we've got that plugged into the camera. So right now, can you see? I've got actual powered XLR audio during a vlogging test. I am like, I know that's kind of a nerdy thing to like be super like crazy excited about, but I cannot believe, I really hope this audio is good because it's not that much bigger than a Rode VideoMic Pro Plus. And let me know if you think this audio is crispy, because if it is, But yeah, this is the vlogging test. The stabilization of the camera is great. The audio internal to the camera is great. Everything is great if you want to use this as a vlogging camera, except I have absolutely no idea what this footage actually looks like. We're in aperture priority mode with auto ISO, so I assume it's being exposed correctly, and the focus is so good and the auto systems are so good in the camera, I don't actually really worry about it. Here, look, I'm looking at here, we'll stand back over here so I can see my reflection in the mirror over here. We're not gonna do that. But yeah, this has been the vlogging test as the A7 III continues on its dominance as a fantastic portable video production platform. The triple P, video production that's the double P. I can't count. Okay, back inside. And we're back. The last, but certainly not least section we talk about is what does the ecosystem / upgrade path for the A7 III look like? You don't just want to be trapped in you don't want to buy a camera to then like immediately outgrow it. You want a camera that you can grow with. And frankly here, it's amazing. No kidding, the Sony camera system is probably the best in the market right now. We've already talked about the XLR adapter, which is something that only Panasonic also offers. The lenses, lenses are Sony's ace in the hole. The first party lenses are basically a complete lineup that will give you everything you could possibly want. But where they win is the third party. That's where Sony's taken the lead. Sigma and Tamron have developed some fantastic, yes, I typed that in all caps in the script so you know it's serious. They've made crazy good lenses for the E-mount. For example, this entire video has been shot with the Tamron 17-28, which is one of my favorite lenses of all time, and I think will probably be the subject of Friday's video because it's my favorite lens of the year. It is the best lens of the year in my opinion. And those third-party lenses are very reasonably priced. Where Sony, Canon, Panasonic, their full-frame lenses are crazy high priced. But here you get this ultra wide angle lens for under $1,000. You can get the 28-75 2.8 for around $1,000. And Sigma just released a 24-70 2.8 for around $1,000. I've spent a long time talking about lenses because it's important. Glass differentiates systems way more than bodies ever do, and being able to pick up the 17-28 was a big deciding factor for me going with this instead of the Lumix S1 and a 16-35 f4. 1,700 words later, so what, right? Has the Sony A7 III weathered the storm of competition? I think so. For the price, it's still one of the top full-frame cameras. The USR recently got a price drop and a huge firmware update, but that 1.73 times crop with 4K, it's just a huge hurdle to overcome, even though it does have better internal and external recording options. The Lumix S line of cameras also has a very nice set of options there, but they continue to use Panasonic's contrast autofocus, which, while it's gotten better, is still not something that I'm willing to work with. I manually focus my GH5 all of the time. And the Nikon Z6 actually is a better body in my opinion than the A7 III, but it suffers very heavily in the audio and the lens department. After all of those awesome options are out there, the A7 III remains on the top of the full-frame mirrorless marketplace, and will probably do so for the foreseeable future until the other brands can catch up on their weaknesses. There is some room here to improve on the A7 III. It's not perfect. There is space for the other brands to catch up. If you like this video, I bet you'd like to keep the Sony train rolling and watch this video where I call the A6400 the best camera released in 2019. Click here to start the party. Thanks for watching.